The summer heat pressed down on Riverside Avenue like a heavy blanket, making the asphalt shimmer in waves. Children played in the spray of fire hydrants while parents sat on stoops, fanning themselves with whatever they could find. It was the kind of day when tempers ran as hot as the concrete beneath their feet. Tyson Williams walked slowly down the sidewalk, his backpack slung over one shoulder. At 17, he carried himself with the careful dignity of someone who had learned early that every step mattered. His mother's words echoed in his mind from that morning. "Keep your head up, but keep your hands visible. Come straight home." She said this every day, like a prayer she hoped would keep him safe. The corner store stood at the intersection where four neighborhoods met. Mr. Chen had run it for 15 years, watching kids grow up, selling them candy when they were small and energy drinks when they got older. Today, a line of customers waited inside, seeking the relief of air conditioning and cold drinks. Tyson pushed through the glass door, feeling the cool air hit his face. The bell above chimed, a sound he'd heard 1,000 times before. But today, something felt different. The conversation seemed quieter. Eyes followed him as he walked to the back cooler. "Excuse me," came a voice behind him as he reached for a bottle of water. Tyson turned to see a middle-aged woman with silver hair and worried eyes. She clutched her purse tighter. "I think someone is following me." Tyson looked around the store. Nothing seemed unusual. A few other customers browsed the aisles. Mr. Chen stood behind the counter, organizing lottery tickets. "I don't see anyone suspicious, ma'am. Are you okay?" The woman's face relaxed slightly. "Thank you for looking. I'm probably just being paranoid. This neighborhood makes me nervous." Those words hit Tyson like a punch to the stomach. This was his neighborhood. These were his streets, his people, his home. He wanted to tell her that Mrs. Rodriguez down the block made the best tamales in the city, that old Mr. Franklin taught kids chess in the park every Saturday, that teenagers here organized food drives and helped elderly neighbors with groceries. But he just nodded and moved toward the counter. As Tyson paid for his water, he heard sirens in the distance. They seemed to be getting closer. Through the store window, he could see people on the street turning their heads, trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. "Those sirens have been going all day," Mr. Chen said, shaking his head. "Something's got the police all worked up." Tyson pocketed his change and headed for the door. The sirens were louder now, maybe just a few blocks away. As he stepped outside, the heat hit him again, but this time it felt different. Heavier, more dangerous. That's when he saw the patrol cars turning the corner. Not just one or two, but four of them, moving fast with lights flashing. They screeched to a stop right in front of the store, blocking traffic in both directions. Officers jumped out quickly, their hands already on their weapons. Tyson's blood ran cold. He'd seen this before, but never been this close. Never been right in the middle of it. "Nobody move!" shouted one of the officers. People on the sidewalk froze. Cars stopped. Even the children playing in the distance seemed to sense something was wrong and grew quiet. Tyson stood perfectly still, his water bottle in one hand, his backpack strap in the other. His mother's words came back to him. "Keep your hands visible." He made sure both hands could be clearly seen. But as more officers spread out, surrounding the area, Tyson realized something that made his heart race. All eyes were on him. Every officer, every person on the street, every face in every window. He was the center of a circle that was getting smaller by the second. "We got a call about a robbery," one officer announced loudly. "Young black male, backpack, seen leaving this store." Tyson's mind went blank. He hadn't robbed anything. He'd bought water. He had the receipt in his pocket. But as he looked around at the sea of uniforms and drawn weapons, he understood that the truth might not matter right now. The woman from inside the store had come out and was talking rapidly to one of the officers, pointing in different directions. Other customers emerged, some looking confused, others pulling out phones to record what was happening. This was the moment Tyson had been preparing for his whole life, without knowing it. Every conversation with his parents, every warning from teachers, every news story he'd watched had led to this single point in time. He was 17 years old, standing on a sidewalk on a hot summer day, and suddenly the entire world was watching him. The truth was simple. He was innocent. But as police officers shouted commands and bystanders held up cameras, Tyson realized that his truth would have to fight its way through fear, assumptions, and years of mistrust to reach the light. The real story was just beginning. Officer Sarah Martinez had been patrolling these streets for 8 years. She knew every corner, every face, every story that these blocks held. Today started like any other day, but the radio call that came through at 3:47 p.m. changed everything. Robbery in progress at Chen's Corner Market. Suspect is a young black male with a backpack, possibly armed. The dispatcher's voice crackled through her radio as she turned her patrol car toward Riverside Avenue. Sarah's partner, Officer David Kim, checked his weapon and adjusted his radio. "Third robbery this week in this area," he said, scanning the street as they approached. "Command wants everyone on this one." As their patrol car rounded the corner, Sarah saw the scene unfolding. Multiple units had arrived first, officers positioned around a teenager standing in front of the store. The boy's hands were visible, holding a water bottle and backpack strap. He stood completely still, but Sarah could see the fear in his eyes even from a distance. Something didn't feel right. Sarah had developed instincts over her years on the force. Real criminals ran or fought or tried to talk their way out of situations. This kid was doing exactly what officers hoped suspects would do, staying calm, keeping his hands visible, not making sudden movements. But her fellow officers were treating him like a dangerous fugitive. "Martinez, secure the perimeter," came the command from Sergeant Collins, who had just arrived on scene. "Kim, start interviewing witnesses." As Sarah positioned herself, she watched the crowd that was gathering. Neighbors emerged from buildings, phones recording every moment. She recognized many of the faces. Mrs. Washington from the apartment building, who always waved when Sarah drove by. Miguel from the auto shop, who had once helped her change a flat tire when she was off duty. These weren't strangers or troublemakers. These were people she had sworn to protect and serve. But the tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Trust that had taken years to build felt like it was cracking with every passing second. "Officer Martinez," called a voice from the crowd. It was Mrs. Washington, her voice shaky but determined. "That boy comes in here every day after school. His mama works double shifts at the hospital. He's never caused trouble for anyone." Sarah nodded but couldn't respond officially. She was watching Tyson Williams, though she didn't know his name yet. The boy was handling the situation better than many adults would. No sudden movements, no arguing, no attempts to run. Just steady breathing and careful stillness. Meanwhile, Officer Kim was interviewing the woman who had called 911. Sarah could hear pieces of their conversation from her position. "I saw him acting suspicious in the store," the woman was saying. "He was looking around nervously, and when I said someone was following me, he got defensive. Then I saw him put something in his backpack without paying." Sarah frowned. She could see Mr. Chen through the store window, looking confused and trying to get someone's attention. The store owner was waving a receipt and pointing toward Tyson, but in all the chaos, no one was listening to him. "We need to search the suspect," Sergeant Collins announced over the radio. "Martinez, you and Johnson conduct the search." This was the moment Sarah had been dreading. She approached Tyson slowly, making eye contact. Up close, she could see he was just a kid, maybe her nephew's age. His school ID was visible through his backpack's clear pocket. Tyson Williams, Jefferson High School, grade 11. "Son, I need you to place your backpack on the ground slowly and step back 3 feet," Sarah said, keeping her voice as calm and professional as possible. Tyson nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I'm going to move slowly." His voice was steady, but Sarah could hear the underlying fear. As he placed the backpack down, she noticed his hands were trembling slightly. The crowd pressed closer, but other officers pushed him back. Sarah could hear voices rising, people demanding to know what was happening, why so many police were needed for one teenager. "He didn't do nothing wrong," someone shouted from the crowd. "Y'all always harassing our kids." "Back up. This is a police investigation," another officer yelled back. Sarah opened Tyson's backpack carefully. Inside, she found exactly what she expected from a high school student: textbooks, pencils, a half-eaten sandwich, and a water bottle receipt from Chen's Corner Market, timestamped just minutes before the 911 call. Her heart sank as she realized what was happening. This was a mistake, but it was a mistake that could destroy lives if not handled correctly. The crowd was growing larger and more agitated. Her fellow officers were on high alert, viewing every raised voice as a potential threat. And in the middle of it all was Tyson Williams, a 17-year-old boy whose only crime was buying water on a hot day. "Sergeant Collins," Sarah called out, holding up the receipt. "We need to talk." But Collins was busy coordinating with other units and didn't hear her. The situation was escalating fast. More patrol cars were arriving. The crowd was getting louder. Someone had started chanting, "Let him go," and others were joining in. Sarah looked at Tyson, who was still standing exactly where she had told him to stand. His eyes met hers for just a moment, and she saw something that would stay with her forever. Not anger, not hatred, but a kind of sad resignation. Like this was something he had always known might happen to him. In that moment, Officer Sarah Martinez realized she was standing at a crossroads. On one side was the easy path. Follow orders, go along with the crowd, let the situation play out however it was going to play out. On the other side was something much harder, standing up for what was right, even when it meant going against her fellow officers. The truth was right there in her hands, printed on a small piece of paper from a corner store cash register. But in a world where truth and perception didn't always align, that receipt might not be enough to save anyone. The crowd continued to grow, and Sarah knew they were running out of time before this became something much bigger and much more dangerous than anyone intended. Marcus Thompson had been recording with his phone for exactly 7 minutes and 32 seconds when everything changed. The crowd around him had grown from a handful of curious neighbors to over 50 people, all pressed against the police barriers that kept growing wider. Marcus wasn't a journalist or an activist. He was a 24-year-old electrician who lived 3 blocks away and had stopped to see what the commotion was about on his way home from work. But when he saw Tyson Williams surrounded by police officers, something inside him couldn't just walk away. "Y'all see this, right?" Marcus spoke into his phone's camera, keeping his voice low but clear. "Police got this kid surrounded like he robbed a bank or something. All he did was buy some water." Behind him, voices were rising. Mrs. Rodriguez was arguing with an officer about why they needed so many cars for one teenager. A group of high school students who recognized Tyson from their school had started chanting his name. Parents pulled their children closer while trying to see what was happening. The energy in the crowd was changing. What started as curiosity was becoming something else: frustration, fear, and years of pent-up anger at situations exactly like this one. "This is what we deal with every day," said a voice next to Marcus. He turned to see Jerome Patterson, a local community leader who worked with youth programs. Jerome's face was tight with controlled anger. "That could be my son. That could be anybody's son." Marcus kept recording as he watched Officer Martinez, trying to get Sergeant Collins' attention. She was holding something, looked like a piece of paper, but Collins was too busy coordinating with other units to notice her. Then Marcus saw something that made his blood run cold. More police cars were arriving, and these weren't just patrol units. An armored vehicle was turning the corner, followed by officers in tactical gear. "Oh, hell no," someone in the crowd said loudly. "They bringing out the military stuff now." The mood shifted instantly. People who had been standing calmly behind barriers started pressing forward. Voices that had been raised in concern became shouts of anger. Marcus could feel the energy around him like electricity before a storm. "Stay back. This is an active police investigation," an officer with a megaphone announced. But his words only made the crowd angrier. "Investigation of what?" Jerome Patterson stepped forward, his voice carrying over the noise. "That boy hasn't done anything but stand there. What are you investigating?" Marcus zoomed in on Tyson, still standing in the same spot where officers had told him to stay. The teenager hadn't moved except to breathe. His water bottle sat on the ground next to his backpack, both exactly where the police had told him to place them. "This is insane," Marcus muttered into his phone. "Kid's been standing there like a statue for 15 minutes, and they're bringing in a whole army." That's when Mr. Chen finally managed to push his way through to an officer. Marcus could see the store owner waving his hands, pointing back at his store, trying to explain something. But in all the chaos and noise, communication was breaking down. Marcus heard fragments of what Mr. Chen was saying. "Bought water, has receipt, comes here every day, good kid." But the officer Mr. Chen was talking to seemed more focused on crowd control than listening to what the store owner was trying to tell him. The tactical team was setting up a perimeter now, their heavy boots and protective gear making the scene look like a war zone instead of a corner store in a residential neighborhood. Marcus had seen these guys on TV during serious situations, hostage standoffs, armed robberies, dangerous raids. Why were they here for Tyson Williams? "Marcus, you getting all this?" Jerome asked, noticing the phone in his hand. "Every second," Marcus replied. "This is going live on every platform I got." "Good. People need to see this. They need to see how we get treated." In the crowd, Marcus could hear conversations happening all around him. Parents calling their own teenagers, warning them to stay inside. Older residents sharing stories of similar situations from years past. Younger people getting increasingly angry at what they were witnessing. "My cousin went through the same thing last year," a teenage girl was telling her friend. "Except they didn't have all these cameras around. Nobody believed him when he said the cops roughed him up for nothing." "That's why we gotta record everything now," her friend replied. "Can't let them lie about what happened." Marcus turned his camera toward Officer Martinez, who was now practically pulling on Sergeant Collins' uniform to get his attention. Whatever she was trying to show him, it seemed important. But Collins was talking into his radio, coordinating with the tactical team, treating this like a major operation. The crowd was getting restless. Someone started singing "We Shall Overcome," and other voices joined in. It wasn't loud or aggressive, but it was determined. Marcus could feel the power in those voices, the history and pain and hope all mixed together. But he could also feel something else building. The longer this went on, the more people arrived, and the more heavily armed police showed up, the more likely it became that someone would do something that couldn't be taken back. Marcus zoomed in on Tyson's face. The teenager was sweating now, not just from the heat, but from stress. His eyes kept moving between the officers surrounding him and the crowd that had gathered to support him. Marcus could see that Tyson understood exactly what was happening. He had become the center of something much bigger than himself. "Hold up," Marcus said into his phone, noticing movement in the crowd behind him. "Something's happening." A group of teenagers from Jefferson High School had arrived, still wearing their basketball practice uniforms. They recognized Tyson and were trying to push through the crowd to get closer. The police saw them coming and moved to intercept, treating their approach as a potential threat. "That's his teammates," someone shouted. "They're just kids." But the officers didn't know that. All they saw were more young people moving toward their perimeter, potentially complicating an already complex situation. Marcus kept his camera rolling as he watched two worlds collide. A community trying to protect one of their own, and police officers trying to do their job in a situation that nobody fully understood. In the middle of it all was Tyson Williams, 17 years old, holding the receipt for a bottle of water that might be the key to everything. The breaking point was coming. Marcus could feel it in the air, see it in people's faces, hear it in the rising voices around him. Whatever happened next would determine whether this day ended with understanding or exploded into something that would hurt everyone involved. The truth was there, waiting to be heard. But first, it would have to survive the storm that was building around it. Detective Lisa Chun, no relation to the store owner, had been investigating the string of robberies in the area for 3 weeks when her radio crackled with the call about Riverside Avenue. As she drove toward the scene, she reviewed what she knew. 3 corner store robberies in the past month, all following a similar pattern, all involving teenage suspects. But when she arrived at Chen's Corner Market, Detective Chun immediately realized something was wrong with this picture. She had 22 years of experience reading crime scenes, and this didn't look like any robbery she'd ever investigated. The suspect wasn't trying to flee. He wasn't armed. He hadn't resisted arrest or even been arrested yet. Instead, he was standing calmly while surrounded by enough police officers to handle a riot. "What's the situation?" she asked Sergeant Collins as she approached the command post that had been set up behind the patrol cars. Got a call about a robbery. Suspect matches the description from the other incidents. We're securing the scene and preparing to make an arrest. Detective Chin looked toward Tyson Williams, then at the crowd that had grown to nearly 100 people. News vans were arriving now, their satellite dishes extending like metal flowers reaching for the sky. Social media posts were spreading faster than wildfire, and she could already see people streaming live video from multiple angles. Sergeant, before we go any further, I need to talk to the store owner and review what evidence we have. Collins looked annoyed. Detective, we've got a crowd situation developing here. We need to move fast before this gets out of hand. But Detective Chun had seen what happened when departments moved fast without thinking. She had also seen the video footage from similar situations in other cities, watched how quickly community relations could be destroyed by rushed decisions and poor communication. Give me 10 minutes, she said firmly. 10 minutes to make sure we're doing this right. As Detective Chun walked toward the store, she passed Officer Martinez, who was still holding that piece of paper and looking increasingly frustrated. Officer Martinez, what do you have there? Detective, this is the receipt from the suspect's purchase. He bought a bottle of water at 3:44 p.m. The 911 call came in at 3:47 p.m. The timestamps don't match what we were told happened. Detective Chun examined the receipt carefully. Timestamped, itemized, showing exact payment method. This wasn't evidence of a crime. It was evidence of innocence. Where's Mr. Chun? I need to speak with him immediately. Inside the store, Mr. Chun looked relieved to finally have someone who wanted to listen. Detective, I've been trying to tell everyone. That boy didn't steal anything. He bought water, just like he does every day after school. Very polite, always pays with exact change. What about the woman who called 911? What did you see of her interaction with the suspect? Mr. Chin shook his head. She seemed nervous about something, but not because of the boy. She asked him if someone was following her, and he looked around to help her. Then she said this neighborhood made her nervous. The boy looked hurt by that, but he didn't say anything rude back. Detective Chin felt the pieces falling into place. A misunderstanding, amplified by fear and assumptions, had created a crisis that was now being broadcast live across social media platforms. Outside, the crowd had organized itself into something more structured. Community leaders were speaking through megaphones, calling for calm but also demanding answers. Marcus Thompson's live stream had been shared thousands of times, and people from across the city were starting to arrive. We want answers. Jerome Patterson's voice carried clearly across the scene. This young man has been standing there for almost an hour, and nobody has told us what he's supposed to have done wrong. Detective Chin could see that the crowd wasn't angry in a dangerous way. They were angry in a righteous way. These were parents and teachers and neighbors and friends who had watched the situation unfold and recognized the injustice in it. But she could also see that her fellow officers were interpreting the crowd's energy as a threat. More backup units were arriving. The tactical team was discussing crowd dispersal options. Everyone was prepared for the worst-case scenario instead of working toward the best-case outcome. Detective Chun to Sergeant Collins, she said into her radio. I need to speak with you immediately. When Collins arrived at her position, Detective Chun laid out what she had discovered. The receipt, the store owner's testimony, the timeline that didn't support the robbery allegation. All the evidence pointed to a simple truth. Tyson Williams was innocent. So what do you want me to do? Collins asked. We've got 100 people out there expecting us to do something. We tell them the truth. We apologize for the confusion. We let the young man go home. Collins looked toward the crowd, then at the news cameras, then at the tactical team that was costing the department thousands of dollars in overtime. It's not that simple anymore, Detective. This has become bigger than just one case. That was the moment Detective Chun realized they weren't just dealing with a mistaken identity situation. They were dealing with years of mistrust, decades of similar incidents, and a community that had reached its limit with being patient about injustice. In the crowd, she could see signs being held up. Justice for Tyson. Black Lives Matter. Our kids deserve better. But she could also see other signs. Support our police. Law and order. Let them do their job. The community itself was divided about how to handle the situation. Tyson Williams remained in the center of it all, still standing where he had been told to stand, still holding his composure despite being surrounded by chaos. Detective Chen walked over to him, knowing that every step was being recorded and broadcast. "Son, what's your name?" "Tyson Williams, ma'am." "How old are you, Tyson?" 17, ma'am." "Do you understand what's happening here?" Tyson looked around at the police officers, the crowd, the cameras, then back at Detective Chen. "I think there's been some kind of mistake, ma'am. I just bought some water and was walking home." Detective Chen saw something in his eyes that broke her heart, the understanding that even though he was innocent, his innocence might not be enough to save him. This 17-year-old boy had learned lessons about the world that no child should have to learn. "Tyson, I want you to know that we're going to figure this out. The truth matters, and we're going to make sure the truth comes out." Behind her, she could hear Sergeant Collins on his radio, calling for more units. The situation was escalating in every direction except toward resolution. Detective Chen realized that finding the truth was only half the battle. The other half was getting everyone to accept it. The voices rising from the chaos were telling a story about more than just one afternoon on Riverside Avenue. They were telling a story about trust, fear, justice, and hope. And at the center of it all was a 17-year-old boy who just wanted to go home. The truth was clear now. But the question remained, would the truth be enough? The moment that changed everything happened at exactly 5:23 p.m., 1 hour and 36 minutes after the first patrol car arrived on Riverside Avenue. Detective Chen had spent the past 20 minutes moving between groups, talking to Sergeant Collins, reviewing evidence with Officer Martinez, speaking with community leaders in the crowd, and checking in with Tyson Williams, who remained remarkably calm despite being at the center of a storm that had grown far beyond what anyone could have imagined. But it was Marcus Thompson's live stream that created the breakthrough moment. He had been broadcasting continuously, and his viewer count had climbed to over 50,000 people watching in real time. Comments were flooding in from across the country, and the hashtag Justice for Tyson was trending nationally. Then, at 5:23 p.m., something extraordinary happened. "Wait, hold up," Marcus said into his phone, lowering his voice. "Y'all, someone in the comments is saying they know who really robbed those stores." On his screen, a verified account had posted, "I'm Detective Rodriguez from the East Side Precinct. We arrested the real robbery suspect this morning. 3 males, ages 19 to 21, confessed to the corner store robberies. None of them matched the description of the young man in your video." Marcus immediately screenshotted the comment and showed it to Jerome Patterson, who was standing next to him. Within seconds, the information was spreading through the crowd faster than any police radio could carry it. "Detective Chen," Jerome Patterson called out, pushing through the police barriers. "We need to talk right now." Detective Chen saw the urgency in his face and met him halfway. When Jerome showed her the comment on Marcus's phone, she immediately got on her radio. "Detective Chen to dispatch. I need immediate verification on arrests made this morning related to the Riverside Avenue robbery cases. Check with Detective Rodriguez, East Side Precinct." The response came back within 3 minutes. Detective Chen confirmed. 3 suspects arrested this morning confessed to multiple corner store robberies, including the incidents you're investigating. Case files being updated now. Detective Chen closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of what had just happened. Not only was Tyson Williams innocent of today's alleged incident, but he was also innocent of any connection to the actual robbery spree that had prompted such a heavy police response. She walked directly to Sergeant Collins, who was coordinating with the tactical team about crowd dispersal strategies. "Sergeant, we need to end this right now. The Real robbery suspects were arrested this morning. We have confirmation from dispatch. This young man is completely innocent, and we have a crowd of people who deserve to know the truth." Collins looked around at the scene. The crowd, the media, the tactical units, the overtime costs, the national attention that was now focused on their department's handling of the situation. "How do you want to play this?" he asked. "With honesty," Detective Chen replied. Complete honesty. What happened next became a moment that social media would replay millions of times, that news outlets would analyze for weeks, and that would be studied in police academies as an example of how to handle crisis communication. Detective Chen walked to the center of the scene, asked for a megaphone, and spoke directly to everyone present. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Detective Lisa Chen. I want to speak directly to all of you about what has happened here today, because you deserve to know the truth. The crowd quieted. Even the police officers stopped their conversations to listen. This morning, before any of today's events occurred, officers from the East Side Precinct arrested the individuals responsible for the recent corner store robberies in this area. Those suspects are in custody and have confessed. They do not match the description of Tyson Williams in any way. She paused, letting that information sink in. Furthermore, our investigation of today's incident shows that Mr. Williams purchased a bottle of water from Chen's Corner Market at 3:44 p.m. He has a receipt for that purchase. The store owner confirms this transaction. Mr. Williams committed no crime today or any other day related to these cases. The crowd began to murmur, but Detective Chen continued. What happened here today was a combination of miscommunication, misunderstanding, and mistakes. But what I also saw today was a young man who handled an incredibly difficult situation with remarkable maturity and composure. I saw a community that stood together to support one of their own. And I saw police officers who, despite some missteps, were trying to do their jobs and keep everyone safe. She turned toward Tyson Williams. Mr. Williams, on behalf of the department, I want to apologize to you. You should not have had to endure what you experienced today. You did everything right, and we should have resolved this much sooner. Then she addressed the crowd directly. To this community, I want to say that your voices mattered today. Your presence here, your demands for justice and transparency, that made a difference. You held us accountable, and that's exactly what communities should do. Marcus Thompson, still streaming live, captured the moment when Detective Chen walked over to Tyson Williams and personally handed him his backpack and water bottle. You're free to go home, she told him. Again, I'm sorry for what you went through. Tyson Williams, who had stood in that same spot for nearly 2 hours, finally moved. But instead of hurrying away, he did something that surprised everyone. He walked to the megaphone. Can I say something? He asked. Detective Chen handed him the megaphone. Tyson looked out at the crowd of neighbors, friends, strangers, and police officers who had all become part of his story. I want to thank everyone who came out here today, he said, his voice carrying clearly across the scene. I was scared, but knowing that my community had my back made me feel less alone. I also want to say that I don't hate anybody for what happened. Mistakes happen, but I hope we can all learn from this and do better next time. He looked directly at Detective Chen and the other officers. And to the police, I hope you understand now why people in my neighborhood get worried when situations like this happen. It's not that we don't respect what you do. It's that we want to make sure fairness happens for everyone. The applause started slowly, then built into something that filled the entire block. It wasn't just applause for Tyson's words, but for a moment when truth finally broke through all the confusion, fear, and misunderstanding. As the crowd began to disperse, Marcus Thompson ended his live stream with words that would be quoted in news articles for weeks afterward. Y'all just witnessed something special. Not just because the truth came out, but because of how it came out. Through community, through persistence, through people not giving up on doing what's right. This is what justice looks like when everyone does their part. Tyson Williams walked home down Riverside Avenue, carrying his backpack and his water bottle, but also carrying something new. The knowledge that when the worst happened, his community stood with him. The truth eventually prevailed, and even in the darkest moments, there was reason to hope. The story that began with fear and misunderstanding ended with truth, accountability, and a community that was stronger for having faced a challenge together. It was a reminder that in a world where so much divides us, the pursuit of justice and truth can still bring people together. Detective Chen stayed on the scene until every police vehicle had left and every neighbor had returned home safely. As she wrote her report later that evening, she reflected on a day that had taught her as much as she had taught others. Sometimes the most important cases aren't about catching criminals. They're about catching mistakes before they become tragedies. The truth had been unveiled, not through force or authority, but through persistence, community action, and the simple power of people refusing to accept injustice. And in a summer that had started with tension and mistrust, one afternoon on Riverside Avenue had shown everyone involved that there was still hope for building something better together.